we're not gonna walk through super, I say that, I'm pretty sure I said that anytime. I'm gonna do my best to not go super, super detailed, but it's so important. Ledger entry records window. This is the most important window on your accounting. This is your checkbook, like on some serious steroids, with a bunch of bells and whistles. I mean, like, I don't know how else to explain it. This is what pulls all your reports. When you post, what posting means, when you hear the word like post, and you're posting from contributions, or you're posting from payables, or you're posting from payroll, or you post your income from your treasurer's reports, and all those different ways in the system that you post. What that does, that's taking the money that you said you received, and it's putting it into your checkbook. Okay? That's what posting is. So, if I print a report, and I'm printing my income report for the day, and I look, and I'm missing money, I know I put in treasurer's reports. Why aren't they here? Did you post them? Because if you posted them, chances are they'd be in there unless there's some crazy issue. But check and see if you posted them. Biggest calls we get, missing a lot of my income. We go to contributions, there's all the deposits that they never posted. So if you've not posted it, if it's not in here, you haven't posted it. Put it in there, because that's what pulls it. Now, if you can do things manually. So let's say you have a check. You just have one check to write. This is not your bills. It can be, but payables is better for speed for writing checks, and you'll see that here in a minute. But this is for one-offs. Somebody gets and they write their check, and they show up, and you see that stub on your desk, and you're like, okay, I got this. I could have done that for you last night. But you go in here, you can simply click check and fill out the information just the way they wrote it out. Okay? You do not have to put a vendor in, but you can. Here's where you would want to think about when to put a vendor in. Do you need to ever print and see what checks you've written to that particular person or vendor? Then you want to use a vendor. If it's a one-off, you don't have to tie it to a vendor, because you do have to do the written to. I think the system itself doesn't require either field, because you could do either or. But the written to will get filled in if you use the vendor as well. Or you could just, I'm doing a one-time check. I'm not going to track it as far as we're not keeping it up with anything. You can just type it here, do the written to, and print the check. Kind of like when we go to payables, the miscellaneous vendor, and you can change that miscellaneous vendor. So in here, you can do that just by writing the written to. Or you can attach it to a vendor, and you can either type in the vendor's name or part of the name, or you can pull up a list of your vendors. Address, memo, things like that, they're not required. Okay? Certain things I would recommend, but again, not required. Checking account, what asset does this check come out of? Which one is it? Select it there. Then your account number for the income or for the expense. Just going to confuse you, that's all. If you're not sure what the account number is, you're not my grandma, you don't have every single Northern Ohio chart of accounts memorized, or you're me in hopes, I guess, and I keep getting it wrong. You can come in here and use that little icon. Let me do it one more time. This little icon opens up the chart of accounts. And then you just find what number. I absolutely clicked an income number. It's because I said it. You can do that, and then it would help if we put an amount. But, not all of that was for housing. You can put in a description, whatever you want, but only $10 of that was there. So you put in the amount, you hit tab, it adds a new line. Why does it add a new line? Yeah, it's not balancing, is it? I told him the check was $25 and I only spent $10 on that expense number. It has to balance. That being said, it is really cool because you can do as many line items as you want. You know, we have churches who, when they pay their credit card, they sit in their ledger and they type all their line items in there and break it down. It's a lot of work, but that's what they do. They hate the accrual side of it. They don't do it. They just write it in there. That's not wrong. It's just a way to do it. So you can have as many as you want until it balances. It has to balance. And by default, it's going to carry that other balance, the remaining balance there, and you can either type in your number. Oh, I got one right. Or you can pull up your chart of accounts. If you type in a number that doesn't exist, whoops, and you are in the right field, it gives you this. Can't find that one. Would you like to open up the select account window? You can say yes, and it brings up your chart of accounts. And apparently it gives you that again. Okay, any questions on this? Then when you hit save, it would scream at me. And now that check is in the system. Now, why do I not need to post? It's already in the ledger. Yep. Because what does posting do? Puts it in the ledger. So I don't need to do anything. This is the same concept for a deposit, except the window looks different. We're not going to go do one, but the window changes. You can type your description, you put your amount, your asset. You do not put, in both cases, do not put your asset in the breakdown accounts. If you do, you're just taking it in and out of the checking account. You've accomplished nothing, right? You just use the same asset number for both the debit and the credit. You've accounted for the asset over here. So you use the breakdown account, you use either the income or expense numbers, whichever it is that you're doing. Okay? Any questions so far? Hey, I'll take it. Is it making sense? Yeah, good. When we save the check, if you click this entry tab, and it wakes up. Okay. And you click the entry tab, this shows you, remember we talked about debit, credit, raise, lower things? So that 1,000 is my checking account, and I've credited it. So I lower, raise, lowered. I lowered it because I put it in the credit column. And then I use the expense numbers, and so I debit them so it shows me how much I've spent with that. Okay? Let's do, the other thing while we're on this screen. Let me show you something that it's just a good, again, couple of things just so you don't have to print. Say I want to know how much is in my checking account right now. I'm writing out a check, and I just need to know what's in it. Or I'm doing a journal entry, and I'm not sure what's in it. Well, when you're doing your journal entry, if your journal entry is for the bank account, let's just say that since these are up here. See up underneath here, I'm really short, but this little section, go up to the checking account one. It says checking-1000.A1. A1, if you recall, was what? That was the category. So the asset was 1,000, then there's a category, and then in parentheses is the balance, current balance, as of the last entry in the system. So if you have something dated for the year 2035, it's included in that figure. And yes, it happens. I actually saw the year 3000 something once. That was fun. But that's what that figure is. Same with your funds. So you have housing. Well, these aren't funds, but this expense number, you have housing. And then 3,000, that's the fund that it is connected to. Then the dot 5045, that's the account number. H is the category it's connected to. And then parentheses is how much you have spent using that expense number since you've closed your year. Okay? It's just one of those nice things to see right away. What about a journal entry? There are times that you do have to move money. We talked earlier about from one fund to the next. In fact, when we hit the year-end stuff, everybody does things different or the month-end stuff. Everybody does things different. I found out. I didn't know. We closed our month, done. We had little things we did, but some people have, some states have journal entries that they do every month that takes for their budget. So they've budgeted out X amount of dollars for this particular department, and then every month they took the figure, divided it by 12, and we'll show you how it's going to be much easier to see what that amount is. But they divide it by 12, and that every month they take that figure and they move it to the youth department or whatever department for that budget. They do it every month instead of doing it all at once, or some don't even move it, they just lean on the budget. Everybody does it different, which is why I'm showing you everything, okay? But we need to sometimes move money from one fund to the next, or something decided to cover, like they wanted to reimburse, world missions. The youth department wanted to move some money to world missions, or something along those lines. They're not spending it, they're just moving it over, maybe to reimburse a check that World Missions did, or something like that. Very rough scenario, but there's just times you don't need it. You can use the actual fund number, so it's under your balance sheet accounts, and we'll do our scenario. So we're going to do to transfer to building fund. Now, pop quiz. I'm taking it out of my general fund. Debit or credit? It's a fund I'm moving. I'm using a fund number. Anybody remember? You debit. You debit a fund to lower the fund. So I'm going to take $2,000 out of the general fund. Notice it automatically moved the other $2,000 to the credit side because we do double entry. So where am I going to take it to? My building fund. So I go here. Where's my building fund? And then if I want it, I can do, which I recommend, transfer from general fund. The only reason I say that, when you print reports and you see it, if you're not printing this whole ledger entry and you're just printing 3100 and it says transfer to building fund, where did that come from? I like the details. If you haven't learned by now, I like details. So that just helps, because to me, the more details, the less questions. It's great. When you can provide more details, the better. I hit enter, and it's saved. Now, that being said, let's look at this fund balance when we are done saving in our Wi-Fi. And it's teaching us a lot of patience. Oh, it's good. I can grip my tea. So, notice general fund -3000.E. Why isn't there another account number after it, like the expense numbers? Because it's a balance sheet account. So it says 3000.E, and then it gives me the balance of that fund as of the last entry in the system. So the general fund now has 3000, but you remember my building fund was in the red by what, like 8,000 something? Now my building fund is in the red by 6,000 because we transferred 2 into the building fund. Okay? Let's create one. So we go to recurring ledger entry records setup. It's a tongue twister. This is where you do the initial setup. This is where you say, here's what I want done every month. Okay? So you just simply, without doing it, I'm so afraid Siri is definitely going to go off. keep forgetting. Without to set this up, if you look, the window looks identical. There's a difference though. Do we have a transaction date option on here? But we have a day of the month in place of it, okay? So in this case, what day of the month do we want this to go? So let's add, we want it to just be an entry. We're going to do it on the first of the month. Doesn't have a check number. Doesn't need a written to. We're going to take it out of our general fund. We'll do 2,000. Then we'll say building. For time's sake, we're not going to do description. Let's do 500. I'll do it that. Oh, wait, wrong way. And I don't know the other numbers. Then we choose another number. And we'll just leave it at, I've got it all messed up doing it that way. Back that up. Where am I at? 1,500. So what I've told it is every month when I tell you to post this, I want you to take 2,000 out of the general fund, move 500 into the building, and move 500 into the missions fund. Okay? And you can do this for check, you can do this for deposit, anything like that. Yes, ma'am?
I inherited a lot of my stuff.
I hear that a lot. We inherited a lot of my stuff.
We have always done ledger entry, what you're doing here, but it has went from an expense account to a...
You can do that.
Okay, so
I'm just doing the fund.
So I didn't know if I need to change it to the funds, or can I do it from income to expense?
So doing it from income, so the thing is, we've been doing journal entries, and I was taught I have to do it from an income to an expense. That's not wrong. They wanted you to pull from the income, put it into an expense number for whatever that reason was. Again, if you remember our chart early on, your bottom line is still going to be the same, but it's going to print on income and expense reports. If they don't want it on income and expense reports because you didn't spend the money or you didn't, get the money, then you want to use the fund number. That's when you think of what the difference is. Your bottom line is the same. You just, using the fund, you cut off that report there. So we got it set. Well, it is the, whatever date it is. What is the date? The 18th? Is it? Was I right? Oh my goodness. I honestly don't even remember that it's Wednesday. Earlier, I couldn't remember what day it was. So you go in here, create ledger entries from recurring. So what this is going to do is it's going to open up a window that shows you the different entries we had in the setup. And the way this looks, create ledger entries for October. And see how it says 1 and 5 and 10 up here? This is the day of the month. If you remember seeing in that other entry, I have one set for the 1st, one for the 5th, one for the 10th. And it's got one eye. If you click this little drop-down arrow, it says NA because I didn't put a written to, but there is ours that we just created. Well, let's just say we've already done it for October. If I wanted to do for October, I'd leave it this way and hit create ledger entries, done. I'm working ahead mid-October, but I'm working ahead. So I need to set these for November. It's asking me, do you want to reset all the transaction dates? What that means is all of the entries in here are going to be set to November. So when I have it create the ledger entry, it's going to create it for November. If I only wanted one of those entries, the one that I currently have selected, to be November, but the other ones to still be October, I would say no. If I wanted it to just be November because I'm working ahead, I can say yes, and it's going to take all those that we've set and move them to the date of November. This does not touch the initial setup. This is just for right now. We'll go ahead and say yes. Now, if there's a change, let's just say this is not 400 this month. I can hit change and adjust it to 200 because it's going to be 200 this month. Save. This also does not affect the setup. So the next time I come in this window, or the next month that I go to do, it's 400 again. It's only for this thing that I'm doing. And when you're ready and you've got it the way you want it, create the ledger entries. Sure you want to do it so you can't accidentally create it? Yep. You can print your report. And then do you want to view it? We sure do. The report that it prints is your posting report, just like any other time. That's your posting report. Side note, you cannot reprint a posting report, okay? I usually recommend that actually the report that looks identical to this is the trial balance report. Run a trial balance for it. It has the same look. I mean, it might be it is a little different, but it's the same. Okay? It's actually hardly different at all. Here are my ledger entries. And now it's affected my balance sheet, my books. Okay? This is the same for payables. When we hit that, I'll show you how to create it, but we're not going to to set it up, but we're not going to run it for time's sake. Same process though. There's no difference. Create, invoice from recurring, I think is the way it's worded. And then it'll create the invoices for you instead of the ledger. What's the difference? Do you need the invoice created so you can print checks or auto draw checks so you have something on a piece of paper? Or do you just need it in the ledger so it affects your books? If you just need it in the ledger so it affects your books, just do a ledger entry one. If you want it in payroll or payables so that you have invoices, you can print the checks, things like that, then you want to do it in the vendor. And it's tied to vendors and so on. Okay? That's the only difference between the two. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I was taught by Jan Jarvis to do this. I've only ever used this for the ACH or auto draw. Is it used for other things?
Recurring?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, I was taught to only use this for ACH or auto draw. Is this used for other things? Yes, I have seen this used for a lot. I have seen this kind of used where it probably was too much more work for them because they just got excited and started creating all kinds of recurring things, and it actually was going to cause them more work because they had to change it every month. We have some churches that they have outsourced their payroll instead of using what they already have in CDM. And so their payroll system sends them this massive list that they have to put into the ledger. So they put and create a recurring for it, and then they go in and just put the figures in. Just keeps them from having to do it. There are scenarios that can be done that way. You can, if you have some bill that comes out every month. It might be a little different amount, but again, it's got different things, but it's automatic. You don't even need an invoice for it. You just want it in the system. You can create it in there as a check or, journal entry, tie it to the vendor if you want, and just adjust the figures if needed. So you can. Do you have to? It's just a time saver. You know what I mean? It really is. Yeah. And I think it's great. Yeah.
Historically taught, 20 years ago, cut the ends off the hand type thing. Never actually goes into an actual fund before.
Okay.
How does that look on a ledger report? Does it show up anywhere on a ledger report?
Good question. So the question is, I've never actually done a transfer using fund numbers. Does it show up on a ledger report? Awesome question. Yes and no. So where it would show up would be trial balance, It will show up in there because it allows you to choose any report that allows you to choose balance sheet accounts, it will show up.
So your fund ledger report, gosh,
Fund activity?
fund activity.
Oh, no. Here's why with the fund activity.
Sorry, the account balances.
Yes.
It shows up in there? Okay.
Well, so yes, as long as you choose, they will show up on the account balances report, as long as you choose the account balance report to not, if it's balance sheet, obviously it's not going to show because that's not set to be that way. But if it's any that's going to show you like the fund and debits, credits for it, yes, it will show up in there.
Beginning, debit, credit.
Yeah, so if you have it set to show you the beginning balance, the debits, and the credits, it will show up in there. Yeah, it is a great report to use. The other one I like to use for details of it is the ledger by accounts report. It's my favorite for it because it's every line. It's that super detailed side of me. You know, definitely was taught that from, just from the years of office work. But it's a great thing. That's why, and here's why I recommend it when you're just moving from one fund to the next. If you're doing it with income and expense, how many times have we had to explain to the council what this is? Yeah, every month you got to explain it. So if you take and use your fund numbers, they don't see that anymore, so you don't have to explain it. You know what I mean? They don't know. Well, as far as they don't see it on the income report and go, wow, we got all this income? No, you didn't. Wow, why did we spend $30,000? You didn't. We used that to move to here. That's what I mean. I guess that did sound really weird, but it's like we're hiding things. Right. No, it doesn't show your report off by 30,000 unless you use like an income and a fund report or fund number. You make it kind of wonky. But what I do recommend, if you have to do transfers, and they want to know why this fund is lower, what have you, that's when I print the account balances or the ledger by account because it shows them those transfers that we did and do it that way. Great question, though, because that's why I keep kind of saying it's not going to show on income and expense, which we don't always want because we do have to, we're bringing questions ahead. And you're not meaning to, nobody's ever meaning to make them wonder certain things. But the least amount of them going, what happened here? Why did we do this here? The better. Like when I am doing something like that, I give it to, you could give it to the overseer, like the ledger by accounts report that just shows those transfers. So if they ask, why is it? He's got it. Every council member might not need it, but he at least has it and he can provide the answers to them for that. It's a great question. And a lot of times why they're trained to use income and expenses for transfers is because they don't know. They don't know how to show it. But then they're struggling, so they just don't print those account numbers maybe on a report, or they do, and then they have to explain it. And it's just a mess. If you use the fund like that, it would work. Depending on if you're just moving money from one fund to cover the next, like the one state that does the transfers for their budget every month. That would be a great explanation.
Interesting situation I came into, which was really helpful to learn this, is when you're transferring, it's always asset to asset, fund to fund, which I didn't know that initially. And I think one of the great things about CDM is you can learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, you can learn through your mistakes, that's for sure.
Transferring, you're doing it asset to asset and fund to fund. You've got to make sure you've got your credit and everything.
Yeah, the asset to asset, if you just do an asset to asset transfer, it's fine, you can. But if that was because you were actually moving money from one fund to another, and you don't do a fund to fund transfer with it, you're going to be off. You're going to have a bit of a, mess on your hands. Not bad, but enough to go, I definitely missed a step somewhere here. Are we all good? Any questions regarding? All right, voiding checks, just very quickly, you can void them from the ledger. The only ones you cannot void from the ledger is payroll. You have to void payroll from the payroll records window. However, If you're using our direct deposit payroll, you can't void for obvious reasons. I mean, you're using direct deposit, so you can't do that. If there's a problem with direct deposit, it's best to just give us a call and see if there's anything we can do. Our hands are tied with certain things with that. Again, for obvious reasons, you submit it, you accidentally submit it for the wrong date. If you call us too late, there's nothing we can do because we can't even touch it. There's just no way. We have tried, there's no way. There are some times, if we catch it fast enough, before the processor sends it out, they can stop it. I have seen that happen if you call quick enough. And it's not like I got to call within the hour. I want to say it's processed like twice a day, something like that. Like it's like 9, don't hold me to these times, like 9 in the morning, and then it's processed again at like 5 in the afternoon or 6, you know. So like say you do your deposit processing at 10, you realize you made a mistake. If you call us before where we can get to them, because it's not just us, we got to contact, you know, the people before they submit it, they can stop it more than likely. I will never say they can officially stop it because we're not the ones that do that stopping. So it's out of our hands. I always hate when things are out of our hands because then we wait on other people. Like our, gonna stop there. Most of you know where I was getting ready to go with that. I'll let you guys fill in the blanks on the fun ride we've had. But if you want to avoid a check, and I find a check in here, could just search like that. And there is, remember how I said yesterday, unless you need it, it's not there? If you need it and you can do it, then it's there. If you need a voided check, you just simply click void, and that voids a check. You'll have an option to create an offsetting entry, and what that does is that's going to take this entry like it is and reverse it. So where maybe the asset was credited, the asset will be debited. If the income, you know what I mean? So it just flips it back because it's turning the money back in. You have also an option, if the period is open, you have an option to zero out the entry. What that does is it takes this and it marks it 0, but it also gives you good notes. When you're on the entry tab, let me just show you. I don't want to do all the void because I'll have to find one that's not cleared, and for time's sake. But you can see how we're searching. It is voided. So I just searched for is voided equal to yes, so I can see my voids, because I did some at the conference in this database. So this one here has been zeroed out. If I click on the entry tab, it tells me when it was voided, exact date and time, who voided it. Notice it says administrator. It's because I'm logged in as administrator. I highly recommend to not utilize administrator for logging in as a normal day in and day out work. Create your name and names for everybody else, not even positions, go by name. Here's why. Who did it? I just administrator, great. How many people have your administrator password? So then who did it? So you create users so that you have them. You can deactivate them. Do not delete them. You can. I don't recommend you delete them. Because again, instead of saying administrator, it'll say NA, because that person's no longer in the system. Even when my grandma passed at the church, I deactivated it so I could see what she did. It would have her name on it. Does that make sense? State changes, thing secretary changes, and so on. But it also tells you exactly what the amount was, and then a note that I put in that said it was mailed but never cleared. That's if you zero it out. Notice down here at the bottom, it says it's been voided and it cannot be changed. If I am going to void it and tell it to create an offsetting entry, it's going to give it the reverse, and it tells you down here at the bottom what reference number it was voided by. Currently, if you're on 12.1, the reference number is the same, unless they have already fixed it. He was sitting in my class, and I was like, that's not right. He's like, I'm already on it. so that's, the deal with that. But here's the deal. Which one do I choose? First of all, if your period is closed, you don't even have the option to zero out. And that's because when you close your period, which we'll get to here in a minute, when you close your period, you're freezing the system for that period. You're telling them, I printed my reports, I've done my bank reconciliation, I'm not making any changes to it, done. So you're freezing it. Why is that important? I've done my bank reconciliation, I know I'm balanced, I've printed my reports for my council members, we've given it to the council members so they have all of that. Well, but I didn't close the period, what does it matter? In your books, it doesn't, in the sense that it's not going to mess throw anything off because you don't have things closed, but you can go and make changes. But I already printed the report. I told them what it was supposed to be. Well, if I go make a change, now it doesn't match their reports. So then it comes time for a meeting, and I print it, and they're like, this isn't the same. You get that one, which are good to have on your state council, but the ones that look at every line item, or you get your overseers, they're great to have for your finances, and they look at every line item. Not that the ones that don't, they look at the bottom line do, but let's just say you have those ones. Well, what's going to happen? What's wrong here? Why is it different? Well, I don't know. I don't remember making that change or anything. You did. Somebody did. When you close your period, you can't make any changes. Can you open your periods back up? Absolutely. You can open your years back up. I just helped a lady. They changed their fiscal year by 1 month. She was trying her best to not have to do it. She wanted her drop-down menu for her monthly report to say that change for that 1 month. My heart hurt for her. To do that, though, you have to open up all the years and change the start date. She's 17. We sat on the phone for about 2 hours. It was fun. But you can do it. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. Yeah, I was like, a month? She goes, yeah, it's just, I've been trying. I don't know why. I was like, okay, let's do it. Buckle down, baby. We're going to open up 17 years worth. Pretty sure some people would have an absolute heart attack. I don't blame them on that. So when the period's closed, it's going to be zeroed out. But if the period is open, or if the period's closed, you don't have the option to zero it out. But you still can void. But because it's closed, remember, it's freezing that in the state that it was in at that month. So it creates the offset for the day that you voided it. Okay? I've been asked, I don't want that. I don't want it back in there. I want it for when I wrote the check. But you're done with the month. Okay? You're done. It's okay for them to see when you voided it. Right? Because you're basically saying, listen, it's the end of the year. These are 2-year-old checks. Our auditor said, get rid of these things. I'm going to void it, and I can pick a day. This is a day. I'll go through, and I'll void those checks. And it shows. And it's just right in there, and it's nice and clean, and you have record. You can track what you did. I can't stress to you enough about tracking what you've done in things. Okay? So you can track it. So that's why you have the differences. With payroll, again, you have to do that because payroll records, when you void those, it creates negative invoices for your taxes. We'll learn all of that a little later. But you got to do it from the payroll records window, and it takes care of it that way. What time is it? 3. All right, we'll go a little bit, and then we'll give a break. Budgets. Anybody currently use the budget in the system? It's nice, isn't it? I really like it. The thing to think about with budget, and to keep in mind, I guess, with budget, can you guys in the back, can you see, is that close enough? You can see enough? Okay. If not, just wave the white flag and I'll zoom in more. This does not affect your ledger. Think of it as a sheet of paper that you're holding up against what's actually going on in the ledger, but it's digitized. Okay? You can print reports against it. So the reports will give you the actual that's been spent for the year, and then what your budget was, and then the difference, where you're at with it. There's so much, and we'll show you that in a minute. So don't panic if, like, something's not right with it, or, you know, it seems off. There's a difference. It doesn't touch your ledger. It's giving you a piece of paper with it. That being said, it is an awesome tool to use. You can choose your income or expense numbers. Let me go back to one that has figures in it. So if you have income accounts and you are able to budget income, which is hard, sometimes for us, we just gauge what happened last year and kind of guess on that, just to give you a rough idea based off of last year's income. But you just simply put your amount in there. If you want to add accounts to it, you simply click Add Account. Where do you want to add it to? And you click OK. Now, oh, that's for the account sets. Never mind. Ignore me. So I want to add money for Pentecost offering. Let's say I want to say they got, $20,000 for Pentecost offering. And that's it. I want to do my expense accounts. Load them up. Truck on through. Here's the thing I want to show you. Remember how I said I have that state that every month would take the full amount, so they would take $24,000 for senior minister salary, divide it by 12, and that's how much every month that they do. So they do all this calculation. Or you've got something like camp. They don't do camp every year, right? They don't do camp every month, right? They only do camp within a couple of months of the year. If you click the magnifying glass, it takes the figure and it divides it evenly through 12 months by default. So there's two things great with this. One, if you just need to know what that is, because you do have to do these transfers, just click that magnifying glass and you got your figure. Okay? Two, they don't need this every month, right? So when I print my budget report, my ledger to budget report, and it's for the February, it shows 0 and they're doing fine with camp, no problem. Well, then I do it for June, it looks like they blew out their budget for the month. But they needed that money for earlier in the year to do it. You can change this. So they're not going to spend any money. Let's just say this is camp. You can change this. The one thing, which does remind me that I need to create a story for the budget. It does not, by default, readjust these. This is just paper, remember? So you can go in here and you can divide that up. You can do like, whoops. See? And just break it down. And zero out the others, and so on. What that does is it shifts to where now, come camp time, they have the money that they need that was actually budgeted for camp showing on the report. You could put it all for, 1 month. Let's just say 24,000. And so now it's moved for 1 month. Churches use this a lot for VBS. VBS is just a one-time thing, but they do give them a budget. It's great for camp, teen talents, things like that. Teen talent's a great one because it's just 1 month. Well, camp kind of is, but you spend it for like 3 months. But you can budget them. Because this is just paper, where this is so helpful is when you're printing your monthly reports, when you're printing your ledger to budget report, it's giving the committee the right figures. They don't panic because now they've blown out, their budget by a lot because they were only allotted $2,000, but they weren't, right? They just didn't need it for all that time. So you can. Now, here's the thing. You would have to do this for any account number. I had one lady ask me one time about a 6-month budget because they were going to change their fiscal year too. And she was like, can I just tell it to do 6 months across the board? No. By default, this is a 12-month budget. So she would have had a choice to write just 6-month figures, what have you, and she would have to click on this magnifying glass for each account and figure it out for 6 months. That was the only way she had to do it, because most, we don't run into that. But this magnifying glass is a great thing to be able to shift those months around. Any questions on the budget? Man, I am like rapid fire. I'm actually kind of proud of myself. It's 10 till 3. We're rocking this. I feel like it at least. Are you guys, though, are you with me still? Good. If you need to go into the next year, you can, if you want, you can just add all the accounts. And when you click Add Account, if you remember, it said, do you want it to an existing year or a new year? If I click New Year and I put in a new year, do you want to save your changes? Sure, why not? Then it's going to bring up my chart of accounts. Okay, what account numbers do you want? I'm going to use my account browser because I want to just select, or in personnel, I just want, see the difference between holding that control button that I would have had to do? Just randomly choose these. Definitely didn't put thought into that, just click them. Now it moves them, but there's no figure here. Okay, it's all 0. So I have to start from scratch. Or I could copy a year, enter my new year, because I use this at the conference. What it's going to do, didn't do 22, 23. Let's do that again. 22. There was no figures in that. 22. It's going to copy all of it, figures and all. Then you at least don't have to go in and do everything, because some things are just set in stone. They're pretty much the same. I copy the year, and then whenever, the way I do it, there's so many different ways. We have a budget worksheet we'll show you and all that. I print like a ledger to budget report for the whole year, and then I put that year's budget. And when it's time for them to do the budget, then the changes they want to make, I actually have them write it on that ledger to budget report, because they can see if they undershot or overshot their budget or they got right on. And then if they want to make changes, they can write it. So then I can go in here and only change the things that they need to change. Okay? It's just easier. Again, time saver, right? Why redo it? You've already got the majority of it. Well, yeah, I got to make changes. Yes, but you don't have to put all of them in. You know? And if you do, okay. Sometimes they just change it all. You know, inflation's been coming. Things that would normally maybe not go up, like your utilities and things like that, you do. This year, guarantee you, the majority of all of our accounts I'm going to have to change when I go to do ours. I'll still probably copy year, but you never know. But it's just a great reason to have that, a great way to do it.